abstaining to receive the Worshipful Mayor of Oldham, Metropolitan Borough Councillor Dr. Zai Chohanovi.
Please take a seat. May I welcome you to the two extraordinary meetings of the Council this evening. To be clear, there are two separate meetings. The first meeting relates to a request for a national public inquiry to investigate child sexual exploitation, and second relates to the request for Oldham Borough Council to withdraw from Places for Everyone. At the conclusion of the first meeting, there will be a short break before the beginning of the second meeting. May I take this opportunity to remind councillors and members of the public that meeting will be streamed live on a webcast from the Council's website. The Council has a commitment to conduct its full Council business in an environment that is welcoming, secure, and safe for members, employees, and visitors. It is important that meetings are conducted in a safe and fair manner. All persons present at meetings should be treated with courtesy and respect. This includes members of public, elected members, employees, and visitors. Behavior, language, and actions that impact public safety, cause disruption or adjournment to the course of the business at the meetings are not acceptable. Members of the public are asked to note the public meeting protocol, which is also available on the Council's website, and elected members are reminded to note the elected member protocol of the Members' Code of Conduct, which provides details of the expected principles of behavior. I should advise Council that I have convened this extraordinary meeting under paragraph 3.1b of the Council Procedure Rule as set out at Part 4A of the Council's Constitution. The first meeting has been called to receive and consider the motion that is set out as, on the agenda and summons for this meeting that was published last week. Therefore, no business other than the specified in the agenda and summons to this meeting may be considered. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apology from Councillor Malik. Any other apologies? Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting? Thank you. Request for item 3, request for the national public inquiry, the investigation that investigates the scourge of child sexual exploitation. I call on Councillor Quick to move and Councillor Arnott to second the motion. You have 4 minutes to move and 4 minutes to second the motion. Councillor Quick.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Mayor. I think for those not in the chamber, because they're the ones that essentially are who matter in this. It has been a culmination of years of trying and years of pushing from people, members of the public, survivors and others who have been demonised, accused of conspiracy theorists, making up lies, and of course it's all something that those who have gone out there and spoken about and done so bravely have been silenced. It isn't something I think anyone can quantify as to what harm these evil rape gangs have caused, because it's now proving through evidence and testimony that's coming out now, thanks to its profile being raised through media outlets such as GB News, through online forums and blogs, and certainly from Elon Musk, who basically did more in one tweet than any of the local press did in the past decade. And it's important to remember that this national public inquiry that we are trying to call for is to right an incredible wrong, because it's becoming abundantly clear that people have been ignored, crimes have been ignored, people have covered up these crimes, and it's about time that the lid was lifted on this disaster, a national scandal of children, young women, young boys who have been abused. Abused on what can only be described in some of the most evil acts that have not been seen for probably since at least wartime, and if not before. And I think we should give them, brave survivors, give those who have fought so bravely for this, a voice. Because we have seen in Rotherham how public officials covered it up. Council officers covered it up. The police covered it up. You cannot deny this anymore. It's out there. And the more it's denied, the more it's delayed, the more this goes on, the more we debate this, we are now kicking the can down the road through time. And the National Public Inquiry, with the proper statutory powers, is what is essentially needed. Because nobody can escape the lens and the investigation and the eyes of any investigation then. Because you will be held to account. No matter who you are, no matter where you were at the time, you will be held to account. And that is why a national public inquiry is needed. It isn't because of who was in government at the time. There was failures from my party, there was failures from the Labour Party, there was failures from all parties. But now is the time for us to grasp that nettle and settle this matter and get justice for those who need it. Because we cannot allow justice to be delayed and if justice to be denied. The longer we have wait on this matter, the longer it will be before those who have called for this will be around. And that is a sad fact. Because many of these people who committed these crimes have essentially got away with it for years. And unfortunately, lessons haven't been learnt. No matter how many reviews or small investigations we've had, whether it be the Greater Manchester review into Oldham, which was nothing more than a whitewash. It was a whitewash, and despite what's been said in the press, it didn't get to the root cause of what happened.
Do you want to?
You want to conclude, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please.
My apologies. And I think that this is why a national public inquiry is needed. Not because of me personally, not because of my party, but because it's the right thing to do. And please support our motion tonight.
Thank you. You will have opportunities to speak again. Concerner, do you wish to second it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second the motion and support the points that Councillor Quigg has made. The scourge of child sexual exploitation has hung over this borough for far too long. It won't go away. We must face harsh and unpleasant realities, and like all problems, we can only fix them when we accept that there is a problem and what that problem is, however difficult that may be. We have failed, and we have failed many times. We have allowed cultural sensitivities to cloud our judgment and actions. Both the Council and Greater Manchester Police have failed in their duty, which allowed a vile rapist to be employed by the Council in a public-facing role for 18 years. We have not investigated fully, with urgency and vigour, repeated and desperate concerns raised around shisha bars, taxi firms and children's homes. We have failed to understand the scale of abuse taking place on our doorstep and its links with neighbouring towns. We have been blinkered and we have been naive. We have failed to act against police officers, council officers, politicians or others where their actions or lack of them have clearly led to these horrific abuses continuing for years. We have failed to listen to the public when they have called for and campaigned for action. We have attacked them as far-right agitators, conspiracy theorists, criminals, racists and worse. We have accused politicians in this chamber of playing politics when they have refused to be silenced and let this issue be brushed under the carpet. We have voted down repeated requests between 2020 and 2024 for inquiries of different kinds. There is more, so much more, but now we must be prepared to stand up and face the full reality, the gravity of the situation and the unspeakable truths about what has happened and is still happening. We have a duty to the survivors, to those who have not yet come forward to tell their story, and to those who will never come forward. We have a duty to the decent, law-abiding members of the community these perpetrators lived in, the vast majority of them who are appalled by their actions. We have a duty to decent, hard-working, conscientious council officers and police officers. As members of this chamber, we have a duty to seek the most robust, far-reaching and forensic statutory inquiry possible to get to the very heart of this appalling matter, and we must be seen to do so. The public expects it, and they have every right to. A local review, however it's framed, is not enough. While I agree that any inquiry must be survivor-led, it must also be wide-ranging and have the ability to go wherever the evidence takes it, not only to look at the terrible crimes, but the circumstances that allowed them to take place, the responses or lack of them from any and all agencies, and importantly, any evidence of actions either directly or indirectly intended to suppress, conceal or censor by this council, its officers, Greater Manchester Police or the press. We must seek to understand the scale of the CSE issue and appreciate that this has taken place and is taking place in many other villages, towns and cities across this country. I'm nearly done. I urge members to support this motion and join other local councils in the borough in demanding a national public inquiry. It's the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have 3 amendments received to this motion, and they have been considered in order they were received. After consideration of each amendment, there will be a vote, and if any of the amendments are carried, then that particular amendment will become the substantive motion as amended, and the mover of the approved amendment will then have the right of reply to any subsequent amendments debate. So Amendment 1, a call upon Councillor Al-Hamdani to move and Councillor Bishop to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the mover and seconder of the motion and for your words. This wasn't an easy thing to put forward an amendment on, and it was a lot of consideration went into exactly what we were trying to achieve by doing that. And it's not particularly an easy thing to speak on. I am not a survivor. My voice is not the important one. But I think it's important for people who aren't survivors to stand up and to try and be honest and considered and give the support that is needed for people who are in that position. I think one of the things that we were trying to do with this amendment is not to delete too much. So there's been so many suggestions of things being covered up, and whether your intention is just to try and take the debate somewhere else, I think it was really important that we actually left in as much as we could to the motion to get that across, that we weren't trying to say this is not this or this is not that. So the level of rape, sexual abuse, sexual assault in this country is frightening. 1 in 4 women over the age of 16, 1 in 6 children, and 1 in 18 men. And so taking anything out that doesn't refer to that runs the risk of doing something to cover that up. Now, we have changed some of the language, and we haven't repeated, once a point's been made, we've chosen not to go back to it. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, if you are a survivor of this, and we took advice from people who are survivors, that going over in detail the depth of some of that criminality and what it involves will traumatise you again. And so by doing that, and I'm sure it's not the intent, but the effect is to hurt people again and to make them experience things that no one wants them to have, they should never have had to experience, and no one would ever want them to even have to think about. But it's important that this doesn't get hidden, and one of the things that we've tried to do is put that focus on Oldham and what has happened here. So one of the reasons why the initial review didn't work was it didn't have a statutory nature, and that was what survivors asked us to put in. And so that's the reason for that specific change, saying it has to be on a statutory footing. A national public inquiry into the broader issue, absolutely, brilliant. I would never object to it. But as somebody said to myself and Helen when we were working on this, Oldham should not be a paragraph in somebody else's report. And so for people in Oldham to know that this is for them and that it's their cases, their experiences, their lives, and what support they need, there needs to be a specific local investigation. I'm coming to the end. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that this debate is constructive, and I hope that people can see it in themselves to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I've been demoted, but never mind.
Demoted you, sorry. The first thing we did when writing this amendment is listen again to the statements read out at the last full meeting on behalf of survivors. What stood out is that they were sick of their voices being ignored and of being used as pawns in a political game. One of the key failings of the original motion is not to request, once more, a statutory inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Oldham, which would mandate full cooperations from organisations such as GMP and the Council. This amendment seeks to take care of that, making it the most important change to it. Without it, the motion is pointless, irrelevant political opportunism. No stone should be left unturned, and the insistence on a statutory inquiry informed and led by survivors and their independent representatives is paramount. I repeat the point I made last time I spoke on this subject in the Chamber. Politicians and political activists alike need to step away from this issue and put the power in the hands of those who can help facilitate the right outcome. That is the survivors and those who are independently trained, qualified and experienced, supporting them to achieve that. And that is what we should be enabling. Otherwise, they are always going to be impacted by political or institutional bias. The inquiry should be judge-led, statutory and relentless in its pursuit of the truth, and to this end, victims and survivors are still being let down to this day. The amendment that we have proposed to this motion has not changed the substantive part of it, but strengthened it by requesting an independent statutory inquiry into the handling of recent and non-recent CSE cases in Oldham. It seeks to increase its likelihood of success and achieve cross-party support to get it over the line. I can only hope that that plea is heard and achieved, because constantly trawling over this is extremely traumatising for survivors, as they have made clear. Women and girls are the experts on the experiences of women and girls, so why are they constantly being spoken for and spoken over? Why is it that the most people speaking on this subject at the moment are men. Are we too weak and feeble? Do we not know what we are talking about? I know the answer, and so will most of the women in here. When we speak, we will be shouted down and told we are wrong. We don't understand the dangers facing working class girls and women, despite being one. It appears that yet again, men know more about being women than we do. Classic. And yet no one will see the irony of that, because these oppressive sort of patriarchal practices are still the norm in our society and our culture, let alone others. The amendment acknowledges the fact that in the past, professionals who had a duty of care didn't act because of an ill-conceived notion that they may face accusations of racism. This is unequivocally wrong, and all allegations should follow the same procedures regardless of the background of the accused. But I will not let young people down by allowing them to step out into the world thinking that the only people they need to look out for are taxi drivers or takeaway owners, specifically of Pakistani heritage. It gives them a false sense of security and leaves them vulnerable to the prevalence of abuse by men of other demographics. As practitioners, people should be reporting all signs or disclosures of grooming and abuse regardless of the demographic of the offender. But whilst it is important to acknowledge the failings in Rotherham, we do victims and survivors a massive injustice by targeting just one small part of the demographic that poses a risk. If we are going to tackle this problem, then the first step is for men to stop assuming they speak for women and girls and start listening. Many times I've been told that I've got too much to say for myself as a woman, whilst women approach me silently in the background to say thank you because they dare speak up and face the same wrath. I say to those women, stand up and be counted, and to the men and their enablers that jeer from the sidelines and throw insults when we dare to stand up and speak for ourselves and others, sort yourselves out. This leads me to my other concern, that the sole focus in the media narrative is on young white girls who, whilst obviously important, are not the only victims, of this sort of abuse, which is exactly why an examination of all the factors involved needs to take place. I am sure there are black, Asian and other ethnic minority girls and boys who have been victims of CSE. Who is speaking up for them? I'd like people in this chamber to commit to elevating and amplifying the voices of working class girls and women by not talking over them or for them, but by allowing them the space to express their own experiences and bring forward the actions that they want, and starting to discuss how we can actively reduce the dangers they face. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to speak on this matter? I have Councillor Hinz indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the respectful tone of the Council in the Chamber today. I think that's to be commended. We've had many a scene in here which has brought some disrespect to us, but I think the manner of this debate is very, very good. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to the survivors, the ones who are with us today, the ones who have come forward, and the ones still out there waiting for the chance to take part.
Sorry, may I please request you to let us conduct the business, please?
I continue. By those still... Can I continue, please? And by those who are still yet to come forward. But the abuse still goes on in many respects, by those seeking to make political recognition and gain out of this sort of subject, and more importantly and distastefully in my view, those who are seeking financial gain, either through online grifting or through companies like Rise 2010 CIC. However, moving on, the principle of a national inquiry is a valid one, and it's one we support, but not at the cost of the local one everyone in this chamber fought for to achieve. A national inquiry with full statutory powers will only be effective with the outcomes and findings of local ones. Claims that this kicks the subject into the long grass are unfounded. Rather, this approach gives local scrutiny and national accountability. I fully respect the Liberal Democrat amendment, and I think it covers a lot of areas that we seek to support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. No other member have indicated they wish to speak. Councillor Quigg, do you have right of reply?
Yeah, I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor, given the timings of the meeting. The Liberal Democrat amendment, Councillor Bishop, I can't help being a bloke. That's unfortunate by biological right of birth, so unfortunately I can't quite help that. But to be more serious, I understand what you're saying, that survivors do feel drowned out, but that shouldn't prevent people from speaking on matters such as this, because if it was left to that, we wouldn't be discussing it at all, because this chamber was all too ready not to discuss it, and it should have dealt with this matter back in 2019 when it had the opportunity to do so, not in 2025. So in that regard, we are unfortunately where we are. But in terms of the amendment, and while I respect the additions to the amendment, I do have problems with quotes from Hansard being amended to say things that the person, or persons in this case, the Shadow Home Secretary and the Home Secretary, have said or not said. They said this at the dispatch box in the mother of all parliaments, an opportunity where many people in other countries, in other towns and other cities have not had the opportunity to do so. And we discuss things in chambers and debating chambers, no matter how uncomfortable they may be, but they are factual. These things happened. We have been too squeamish in not being forthright with the public. We have had survivors ignored, whistleblowers ignored, members of the public ignored, decent public servants ignored. This is why we are where we are. And I'm sorry, but to start mending things within the amendment in such a way that takes away from it, I struggle on that part, because to me it could have added and done more in the same vein that the Oldham Group's amendment has done. It's completely added to it and strengthened it, I would say. But this amendment hasn't strengthened it, as much as there are valid points in it. And I'm sorry to say, it does give me great concern when we are essentially knowingly changing what people have said and presenting them as some sort of alternative fact. So on that, Mr. Mayor, I'll conclude my remarks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Quigg. Councillor Hamdani, do you wish to reply? You don't have to.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, the amendments that were made with regards to the quotes from Hansard, there was nothing. The sentences that were left in were left in. So we just didn't quote the whole of a paragraph where it either repeated a point that had already been made, where it went over language that could re-traumatise someone, or where it was specifically political. And all of those were following the statement from survivors that was read out previously, requesting that that did not happen. Beyond that, if your main challenge seemed to be that that was where you weren't happy, I hope that you would be satisfied with the principle of a statutory local inquiry as well as a national inquiry. And I hope that people can find it in themselves to support that.
Thank you very much. So have you concluded?
I have, sorry.
Thank you very much. So does Council agree the amendment? All those in favour? Okay. All those against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. So, sorry, amendment is carried. Thank you. We have a second amendment from call on Councillor Hoban to move and Councillor Haynes to second amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's disappointing that we're here today, that the Conservative group are adding to the distress of survivors by continuing to use this very delicate and serious issue for political purposes.
Councillor Hoban, may I request you, let's stick to, please can I conduct the business, please, excuse me, please, can I, please, we are in a quite serious mode, let's talk to the motions and concentrate on that.
It is about the motion, Mr. Mayor. The original motion that the Conservatives put through didn't even mention survivors until point 7, almost at the very end. It's the independent councillors since 2019 that have been striving for this inquiry into CSE, long before the mainstream parties jumped on the bandwagon, and it was independent councillors that got it across the line in July. So here we are, we have an independent inquiry in process, with the finer details of that still being worked on, and if we want it to be right for the survivors, if we want it to be robust enough to go as far as it needs with the scope that it needs, then we may need to accept that it cannot be rushed. We now know that there will be assistance from the Home Office and from a very experienced KC in commissioning the inquiry, and hopefully, maybe, it could have statutory powers. Yes, we also think a national inquiry is needed, but not at the expense of Oldham survivors. A national inquiry on its own, which the Conservative motion asked for, would just dilute what we need, and it could make Oldham all but a footnote on a much larger piece of work. Surely it's much better for our survivors to be heard and justice sought locally, and then that fed in to a wider national inquiry. In July, I said that once the inquiry was agreed by this chamber, the politics needed to be removed, and more now than ever, that process needs to be left to the professionals. Of course, we need to know that the survivors are at the forefront, and we need to be aware of the progress, but that can be done through the already established CSE all-party steering group. We also need to ensure that the inquiry is truly independent, so as politicians we have no right to form the structure, propose the scope or the depth. Or more learned people and survivors should be free to do that and take it wherever it needs to go. For obvious reasons, we have no sight of other party amendments until the last minute, and having now read the Lib Dem amendment and heard the debate as it is, I think that it gives us the independent local inquiry that we unanimously agreed in July in this chamber, and it includes our desire for a wider national inquiry by the government which could feed from the Oldham one and the others that are planned. This seems the most logical way of covering the scourge of CSA across the country. I'm nearly done. We need no more politicking, no more delay or distress for survivors. We need to consider the survivors and their safeguarding in everything we do now. We need all the background noise and the sniping on social media and elsewhere to stop, and the self-serving agitated and keyboard warriors to stop using their issue to their ends. By all means, if there is evidence or information, then they need to bring it forward to the inquiry once it's established. Then it will be time to put up or finally shut up. With everything that's said, with all that said, to allow the processes to move forward and for the survivors to move nearer to having their voices heard and the justice they deserve, I have supported the Lib Dem amendment to the motion, and with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I will withdraw our amendment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So Amendment 3, I call on Councillor Wahid to move and Councillor Ghaffur to second amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Honourable members and members of the public, I rise today to propose this amendment, not in opposition to the motion before us, but to strengthen it. We fully support the call for a national inquiry. Survivors and their families deserve nothing less than the full weight of the state uncovering the truth. We also acknowledge the Liberal Democrats' position that we must not lose sight of the local inquiry we have fought so hard to secure. This amendment does not remove or weaken a single word from the motion. It strengthens it by ensuring that the local inquiry is granted full statutory powers so it has the authority to compel witnesses and evidence. An independent panel, not this council, who determines the terms of reference, ensuring fairness and credibility, survivors and key witnesses to be compelled to testify, removing any opportunity for silence or obstruction, new survivors and witnesses to be encouraged to come forward, ensuring no stone is left unturned. This is not about party politics, it is about justice. We cannot allow the focus to shift away from accountability. Justice is and must be blind. Blind to caste, colour, creed, race or religion. It must be served without fear or favour, without political convenience and without hesitation. For too long, those demanding justice have been accused of being far-right or racist. I reject this framing and I reject these accusations outright. I stand before you today as a Pakistani Muslim. I am the deputy leader of the Oldham Group, a group of 8 Muslims, 7 of whom are Pakistani and 6 of whom are Pakistani males. We speak with one voice when we say justice must prevail. We, as British Pakistani Muslims, are not interested in statistics. Even one predator within our community is one too many. We shall not make excuses. We will not stand for silence. That is why we shall do what it takes here and within our communities to root out these criminals, to ensure that these vile predators who have tarnished the good name of British Pakistani Muslims across the country are eliminated from amongst us. But let me be absolutely clear. This is not just about one community. Child sexual exploitation has plagued villages, towns and cities across the United Kingdom. It has been carried out by the organised crimes of different backgrounds and covered up by individuals and institutions of all ethnicities. The victims were failed by police who ignored them, by social services that dismissed them, and by politicians who looked away. And while we must expose those failures, let us also acknowledge those within those institutions who served as whistleblowers, police officers, social workers and politicians, who fought for the truth against resistance, who raised the alarm, who demanded justice. Many of them were ignored. Some were silenced. But today, we will not be silenced. This amendment ensures action. It does not just call for a national inquiry, it demands that our local inquiry has real teeth, real independence and a real power to compel answers that we are seeking. And that is why I urge every single councillor in this chamber, regardless of party, to stand with us, support this amendment, support the national inquiry, support the local inquiry, and most importantly, support justice. This is not about headlines. It is not about political points. It is about making sure that no child in Oldham or anywhere in this country is ever failed like this again. Mr. Mayor, I urge one last time that all members unite behind this amendment and let us deliver the justice that has been denied for far too long. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kapoor. Councillor Kapoor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to second the amendment to the Conservative motion, but rather than focusing on the details, I want to address the language used by the Conservative group. Firstly, we'd like to reiterate our commitment to the local inquiry. The Oldham Group is clear and unwavering. We do not tolerate abuse of any kind against children, women or men. However, the Conservatives' motion specifically references Pakistani male grooming gangs. This phrasing appears to be a deliberate attempt to create division between communities. While we have left the language unchanged because, unfortunately, these crimes did occur in Oldham, we strongly oppose the generalisation of an entire community based on the actions of a few individuals, vile individuals. Sexual abuse is a deep-rooted issue that extends beyond one ethnic group. We want all cases investigated, all perpetrators punished, and all victims to receive justice, regardless of the background of those responsible. I could list countless examples of white grooming gangs here, including one as recent as yesterday in the news. But if we were to generalise, then what would you say about the case of Cyril Smith, a white Christian politician who led a ring of men exploiting children? Would we claim that all white Christian men are abusers? Or all politicians are abusers? Of course not. The same principle must apply here. Stop blaming communities and creating divisions. Let's call these inhumane people what they really are: vile criminals. And these criminals are not confined to one sect, creed, or religion. We acknowledge the failings in Oldham and other towns, but rather than using divisive rhetoric, we must ensure that everyone responsible, both perpetrators and those who enabled these crimes, are held accountable. That's why we are calling for a national inquiry with statutory powers. Only through a thorough and independent investigation can we truly understand the failures across our towns and boroughs. Our motion is comprehensive. It addresses the concerns raised by the Conservatives, by the Liberal Democrats and the Independents, making it one of the most strongest and more inclusive proposals that we here have tonight. I urge my colleagues in this chamber to please support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kapoor. Councillor Murphy, you indicated you wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pretty much agree with everything you've said there, but unfortunately the amendment, there's parts in it that we feel that we can't support, but there's parts in it that we feel that we can. But rather than rip it apart and talk about the parts that we can and take away the spirit of the motion, we kind of feel that the best way to do it is to abstain on it. So I just wanted to tell you the reasons why. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quaig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the tone has been slightly lowered by Councillor Hoban in his withdrawal. But let me remind you of the facts, Mr. Hoban. It was Councillor Hudson who seconded your very first motion on this matter.
Councillor Quaig, are you speaking to amendment, please?
I am.
Please, speak to amendment, please.
I am. So that's a matter of fact, matter of public record. And to the amendment by the Oldham Group, like I said, we agree with it, but we're not. I don't know what we're amending now. We're amending the motion as amended, so it isn't the original motion we're now amending. So just so I'm clear, because there's questions in my group on this.
Just to be clear, I'm sure Borough Solicitor will advise you better than me, but I understand.
No, I don't ask. Just through yourself, Chair.
Part of this council, so you can't. Substantive motion as is amended.
So we're now talking to the amended motion with an amendment to the motion. It's getting Donald Rumsfeld there. So, in terms of the Oldham Group's amendment, yes, we do welcome it because it strengthens it. But, Councillor Kapoor, we do have to acknowledge, whether we like it or not, and this is what has been raised in towns and cities across the country, that there has been a sensitivity around this, and cultural sensitivities, which has resulted in things not being discussed or uncovered, because essentially people have been branded racist because of it. So that's why we've included sections from the recent debate in Hansard. These are quotes, again, I keep saying this, these are quotes in their entirety for the relevant sections from Hansard in Parliament. I'm not there, they are there. These are established facts by what people have said, the Home Secretary, Shadow Home Secretary. But these are issues we must discuss. And I do not care whether it's you, Councillor Kapoor, is upset, but as you've rightly said, you want to root out this problem. Well, let's root it out, but we have to get to the root of it, which is that there is a problem in this country where there's a political problem, a cultural problem, and an institutional problem, where Pakistani heritage males have gotten away with crimes against young white girls. We cannot allow that to go unpunished, and it has gone unpunished.
You will have a right of reply.
So my point being is, while we do support the amendment, while we do support the amendment, we will not shy away from uncomfortable truths and uncomfortable facts. That is what we have done, and that is why we stand by what we've said, and we'll continue to stand by what we've said. We won't be silenced by nobody in this chamber or outside.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kapoor, you will have time to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wahid and Councillor Kapoor for your amendment, which we not surprisingly support fully. It made some very strong points. Unless you lived in a vacuum for the last 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, it's impossible not to be aware of discussions which are taking place. Those discussions are taking place on the floor of the House of Commons. It's not being done behind closed doors. It's not being done in committee rooms. This has been taking place in the House of Commons, and it's right that in context and in the time that we live in, that we should address the issue. And I don't think any of my colleagues would for 1 minute seek to demonise one particular group within our society, but there's an issue at the moment which people are discussing, and we reference that in our term. I agree 100% with you. I don't care if you're black, brown, yellow, orange, green, stripes, it means nothing to me. I don't care if you're Cyril Smith or you're Jimmy Savile or that creature who Smythe who worked for the Archbishop of Canterbury. You're all the same to me. You're all equally horrible people, and deserve everything that hopefully will come to you. So yeah, we spoke in a context of what is current, but there's no desire in any way from us to demonise and go for any particular one group of society. It's where we're at the moment. It's current, and it was referenced by us. I hope you'll accept that in the vein and in the manner that it's meant. But thank you for your amendment. We agree with it. We support it wholeheartedly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Al-Hamdani, do you have a right to reply?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you to the Oldham Group for their amendment. So if we were to accept the amendment, what would happen is that all the language at the start of the motion would go back to as it was, which was something that we were seeking to avoid. I don't disagree with any of your additions to the thing. So, as my colleague suggested, our plan was to abstain on the motion. I did not expect our amendment to pass. I suggest that we write, regardless of the outcome of the vote, we intend to abstain still, but regardless of the vote, there is nothing on this that we would disagree with. I will put my name to a letter saying all of that. And I think that I don't think anybody in the chamber would object to that. So I would like to suggest that. Sorry? So I am suggesting that we're going to abstain on the amendment, but I'd be happy to write a letter supporting all of these points and raising all of these issues, as was your intention.
Why would you abstain then?
Because the initial part of the motion would revert to what it originally was. So the things that we sought to change in the rest of the motion would be undone.
Mr Mayor, can I raise a point of order on that? How are we voting on an amendment to a motion which is now amended? We're amending it twice when it's not what we're originally debating. So none of us have got sight of the amended motion, which has now been amended again by the Oldham Group. So which bits are we talking about? It's unconstitutional, surely, for us to vote on that.
So your motion was amended by Lib Dem, and Lib Dem's motion becomes a substantive motion, which you all heard, and now they're amending that motion.
But that wasn't what they placed their amendment on. They placed it on the original motion, which has now been changed.
I'm satisfied that members heard the amendments, so they can decide whether they want to support that or not, and we had the good discussion, and that explanation was given by Borough Solicitor in writing. Sorry. We're entitled to disagree. Councillor Wahid, you have right to...
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Arnott.
Sorry, just, it might be me being a bit thick. It's not unusual. Can I just get some clarity on what Councillor Councillor Al-Ndami's said, and I could be wrong. Councillor Al-Ndami is under the impression that if the Liberal Democrats supported the Oldham Group's amendment, then the wording in the amended motion would revert to our motion. No, that's not my understanding. My understanding is, once the Liberal Democrat amendment was accepted, then that becomes the substantive motion. Yeah. So if the Liberal Democrat group supported the Oldham group's amendment, it would be to their amended motion and not to ours. Once the Liberal Democrat amendment was... Mr Buggertoff's looking up here like I'm up here. Once the Liberal Democrat motion amendment was accepted, that written became the motion. Okay. And that's what's... Am I correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Right, okay. So once that had gone, we're gone then. We're out. There's no word in for us left.
You're not gone because you originally brought the motion.
Yeah, I know. Anyway. But that's the point. The reason that...
you want to explain? Sorry, yes. Could we then get a point, as a point of order?
Yeah.
Would only the additions from the Oldham Group amendment happen and the rest of the text up to that point stay as we'd requested it?
The point of order. Do you want to...
Councillor Hamdani, so your motion is now the substantive motion. So that's clear now. Okay. So what's your question?
So, would only the additions that have been suggested be added on to the end of our motion as it currently stands?
The Oldham Group have placed an amendment, so we need to ultimately vote upon that, and it'll either be carried or not.
Can I have a point of order?
Mr Mayor, this is getting very confusing. This is what I was trying to say.
That's what happens when people start cross-talking. Please,
no,
just
because
listen. Please, just kindly.
Have I not answered your question there?
No.
Can I...
So we have now got a substantive motion.
Yeah.
The Oldham Group have proposed a text with additions that is the Conservatives' original motion with some additions.
Yeah.
At the moment, if we vote for their amendment, do we get the Conservative text with the Oldham Group amendments, or do we get the Liberal Democrat motion and just the additions?
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're voting on the amendment of the Oldham Group. That's the position.
So,
point of order.
Right. Let's not.
Can we have
it's the full text.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Could you please come out of legal context by Borough Solicitor, because make it absolutely clear for members what we are exactly voting for. Like Councillor Amdani said, could you make it clear in plain English in terms of what we're voting on? Because your sort of language is just confusing the members.
Okay, let me explain and then you can confirm I'm right. Okay.
Thank you,
let
Mr.
me
Mayor.
explain what I understood. But I'm not a constitutional expert, but I will ask Alex to confirm it is correct or not. Understand that we are voting at the moment on amendment, which is fully written motion. If that amendment is carried, if Council votes for that, that becomes a motion. Am I correct to say?
Yes, that's correct. We need to deal with one amendment at a time.
Mr Mayor, the problem is that the Oldham Group's amendment is based on Conservative motion language, so it's going to go back to what we originally put forwards, which the Lib Dems changed. So it's like we've gone from one to the other to go back again, so it doesn't make sense. How are we voting on some... That just seems silly.
So if this motion is being carried, I would suggest actually if this motion is carried, we would just go back to the original motion and then again vote on it. Yay! That's my understanding about Borough Solicitor.
I didn't throw that.
The original Conservative motion has different language in.
No, but that's what the Oldham Group has based their amendment on, not the amended...
It has different language.
Yeah, but their amendments to that.
Mr. Mayor, so it is the Lib Dem motion with points 8, 9 and 10 added to it and the additional action. Is that correct? or is it the Conservative motion with points 8, 9 and 10 added to it, as printed? Would it go to as printed now we've got in front of us, or would it now be the Liberal Democrat motion with the points 8, 9, 10 and the additional one? That is all we're asking.
Well, essentially your members here, you can decide whichever way you want. It's your motion, so you can have, by vote, you can have a full Oldham Council motions text, or Oldham Group text, full motion as it is, if you vote for it, or you can have a Lib Dem.
Councillor Al-Hamdani, if you want the Oldham Group, then simply vote for the Oldham Group's amendment. If you're satisfied with their full text.
In that case, if the Oldham Group would be happy with this, I would like to propose the Liberal Democrat text as far as it goes, with the addition of the Oldham Group's points for a vote on that.
Surely we can't just pick and choose which parts of amendments we're going to vote for going forwards, because we'll just do that in every council meeting.
Exactly. You either need to stick with your amended motion, which is currently the substantive motion, or we vote upon the Oldham amendment.
Mr. Mayor.
It's the full text. It needs to be the full text.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
point of order.
Yes.
Point of order. Can I just explain? I don't know where the confusion is. The point of the matter is, right, the Oldham Group has proposed...
Can I have some silence, please?
Proposed an amendment. Now, if you vote for that, that gets passed. If it doesn't, then the Lib Dem amendment passes. So what's the issue? What's the confusion? There's no confusion in this chamber.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
And I think
point of order, given
I
I
think the Borough Solicitor tried to explain that about 10 times.
Mr.
So
Mayor,
it's there.
Thank you very much. Yes,
because it was a move to the original motion, now it's amended. I think where the confusion lies is that, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not voting on the substantive motion, we're voting on the Conservative motion. Now, but it can't be amended at this point because we've not officially done that, because technically the Oldham Group's amendment has to amended my motion. Is that correct? You put your amendment in on the basis of my motion. Right, so that's why they put that amendment in. This is where the confusion now stems from, because they didn't put an amendment to the Liberal Democrat amendment, because you can't amend an amendment in this chamber, which you can in the House of Commons, according to Erskine May, but you can't in this chamber. So the point being, we're now talking about a motion that puts back the original text with the additional items to remove what the Liberal Democrat amendment put in. Is that correct? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So yeah, thank you. Sorry, can I have silence? Sorry, can I have a silence, please? Well, we do need to move on. I will give you, sorry, do you want to?
Well, am I going to my reply now, yeah?
I'm just trying to sort of like understand which way we're going before
Maybe
you
I
give
might be
me
able to help, I don't know.
All right, go on, sorry. At least one helpful person, go on.
Okay, well, first of all, look, the biggest problem that I'm seeing here is that it's about language, yeah? Everybody seems to have an issue about Pakistani grooming gangs. And quite honestly, it should not be an issue to divide us. Firstly, we shouldn't be using that term. But if you're going to use it, if anybody's going to use it, we should not use that to block or slow down the process of justice. So all these amendments that I've seen today are pretty much saying the same thing. So what I propose is that, you know, obviously we've got the Liberal Democrats that at the moment stand as the substantive motion. Procedurally, how are we, as the Oldham Group or anybody else, supposed to put in an amendment to an amended motion? We can't do that. So we are talking about a motion which we've amended that belonged to the Conservatives originally. So what I'm saying is, in regards to you, Councillor Hamdani, is that we didn't delete a single thing from the Conservative motion, not even a single word.
We added. Trying to give me a solution.
We added, yeah? Yeah, well, I'll get there, don't worry. We added. So if we have all your amendments which we've done, fair enough. It's only about language, or whether somebody said Pakistani or somebody said something else. So if we have your amendments and ours, fine, let's take it. But whatever we're going to do, let's do it unified. Let's not do it fragments of one way or fragments of a different way, and dilute this whole thing. Let's make sure this call
request we move to the vote.
Sorry, it's been moved to the vote. Any seconder to that? It's been moved to the vote, sorry. I think the rule is that if you've been moved to the vote, you can... Yeah, yeah. Right, all those in the favour of amendment? Right, yeah, of course we can debate. I think, can I just clarify, especially for the public, if you're thinking this is happening here, this has all been discussed in group leaders meeting yesterday in my parlour, and everyone has been appraised, and everyone had emails, and everyone discussed that. So let's not create a drama here for the public. Somehow we discover something new. So in that note, Councillor Sykes, yeah.
The way around this, I mean, you're right, we did discuss it yesterday, and this is what some of us predicted would happen, because there's good bits and all. We're actually dancing on the head of a pin, because I think everybody in this chamber agrees. But as I understand it, and that's why I'm standing up to do this, this will put the words we've taken out in our amendment back in the motion. What you could do is suspend standing orders, you move your additional points, we'll second it, you tag that onto the end, everybody gets the words in, we've got something at the end that I think everybody could vote for. That might be a way forward, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I personally think it's a sensible approach. We do need to move forward. Are we allowed to suspend the standing orders?
Yeah, if everybody does that.
If so, all those in favour of suspending standing orders, please. Okay, that's carried. The standing orders. So what you're suggesting?
So you can do what you were suggesting, which is move your additions.
Would you like to specify what additions you're moving? Sorry,
it's in our amendment. Yeah, yeah, they're all additions.
Are you happy with that?
There's nothing been taken away. Yeah.
So we take. Sorry. Sorry? Amending the amended motions. With their additions.
Mr. Mayor, would it be
Don't confuse.
Mr. Mayor, would it be possible for the Oldham group just to tell us specifically which points they're adding
that's what
to?
I'm trying. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
Thank
do.
you.
In the supplementary bundle, everything that's in larger font, that basically, in bold and larger font.
Council further results 1 to 5.
Councillor Al-Hamdani,
so
are you?
Points 1 to 5.
I am seconding the proposal from the Oldham group to add all that additional text.
I'll give members a couple of minutes to just review those points so they can make up their mind, which is, I think, the fair way of doing things. In meanwhile, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just say, obviously, it's quite difficult, I think, given to do this in the chamber. Can I make a suggestion going forward? At group leaders, can you not composite your amendments? You have the discussion, you know what's being put forward, and it's so much easier to do it in advance. It's creating confusion, and I think, well, if you need to amend the Constitution, then
I think there's a broader issue, as Councillor Sykes said, about Constitution.
Can we be... What I'm asking for, Mr. Mayor, is we can be really clear, rather than just going through this in part, that the amendment that is being put forward is read out in its entirety, so people are 100% clear on what they're voting on, please.
Is it worth us trying to take a pause and get a clean version?
In which way?
So, if what they're proposing is that everything here is added to the text of Councillor Al-Hamdani's council notes, the resolutions to change to Councillor Wahid's. Just, one second. So essentially what I think we're getting to is Councillor Al-Hamdani's motion.
Okay. I'm gonna ask them to read. I'm gonna.
Yes. Yeah. So what we might propose to do, we can go and get a clean copy of that proposal to everybody in the chamber. 10-minute break.
I'm going to suggest that we take 10-minute break. I'm going to get this copy printed of a proper clear motion of this. So everyone can read it properly so they can make informed choices. Thank you. Please take a seat. Thank you very much, everyone. Let me just explain you what has happened so far. So we are been following Constitution, which has been written by members of this chamber. Councillor Sykes' helpful suggestion helped us to suspend the council rules. That means that we can build consensus. Hopefully that will help and deliver the better outcome. So on that note, that motion is being rewritten. Ask Councillor Hamdani to move and Councillor Wahid to second it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion as people have in front of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wahid?
I'd like to second that, thank you.
Okay. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstention? I'm really delighted that this motion is being carried by full membership, and that shows you the commitment of all members. It's taken too long probably for us to get to this stage, but thank you to all of you. That shows that we all care about our children, about our vulnerable people. Thank you for calling for this extraordinary meeting as well. It's not for political point scoring for everyone. This is for the residents of Oldham, and I hope that this motion will bring the right outcomes and people will get justice, but also in the future this would not happen again. Thank you very much to all. We will take a short break and reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
All rise.
Please take a seat. Thank you all. Please, may we now commence to the second extraordinary meeting of the evening. This meeting has been called to receive and consider the motion that is set out on the agenda and summons that was published last week. Therefore, no business other than that specified in the agenda and summons to this meeting may be considered. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Malik. Are there any other apologies for absence? No. Declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting? No. Okay. Oldham, item 3. I call on Councillor Sykes to move and Councillor Al-Hamdani to second the motion. Oldham Council wishes to withdraw from Places for Everyone. Councillor Sykes, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an opportunity to do the right thing by the people of Oldham Borough tonight. It's been clear for years now that the people out there and who we represent have rejected Places for Everyone. It's been made clear in the feedback through consultations, it's been made clear in the representations we've all received, and it's been made clear in the ballot box. And for some reason, the Labour group, we need to have another vote in this chamber tonight, and they'll need the votes of other people if they wish to deny the will of the people. So, expensive luxury housing on the Greenbelt is not the way to solve the housing crisis. This will be a developer and profit-led plan, not a people and need-led plan. Places for Everyone plan is based on housing calculations from more than a decade ago. Just bear that in mind tonight, as I'm sure some Labour members will tell us that hell will freeze over and the world will stop spinning if you vote for our resolution. Are Labour seriously suggesting that the best Oldham can do to tackle the housing crisis is back a plan which is 10 years old and which was designed in Manchester without any thought to Oldham's local challenges? I think we can do better, Mr. Mayor. What Oldham needs is a local strategy with truly affordable homes. A strategy that uses brownfield, extra-industrial sites first and protects our green spaces for future generations, because once they're gone forever. If we come out of Places for Everyone, that would mean more control and influence over our housing strategy for every person sat in this chamber. Much better than being tied to a plan like we are now, with virtually no control whatsoever. We've had endless debates about this issue, and actually the view of the Council has been clear on the last couple of occasions. A majority in this chamber have voted against Places for Everyone. We're being asked to demonstrate that again because Labour have used, or it certainly feels like it, every trick in the book to avoid writing to their own Secretary of State asking for Oldham to be removed from the plan. The outcome last time at this council was 30-29, and people thought, and it's crystal clear when you listen to the speeches and play the video back, we were voting to ask to leave then. Clearly not the case. Well, here it is. We've done what we said we'd do, and for Liberal Democrats, nothing has changed, and we are consistent in our view. We are against Oldham's part in Places for Everyone today, just like we were at the very start. So vote for this motion, and let's get on with writing to the Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Al-Hamdani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm rising to second the motion. I'm not going to say too much because we've already had the debate. The vote apparently didn't count, but I hope it goes the same way. We are at the mercy of a developer-led system in this town, in this borough, in this region, in this country, and that is wrong. And this is part of that system. And whatever you think of Places for Everyone, if you think you might think, oh well, you know, we got something better than we could have done. This system is broken, and we don't get the chance to say that it's a broken system very often. This is your chance to say that it is. This is your chance to say that this isn't the way that we should build in houses. This isn't the way that we should be trying to provide for the people of this borough. And further afield, we need a different system. We need a system which better takes into account what we actually need when we build those houses, so that people get the GPs that they need, the dentists that they need, the shops that they need. Because I'm sick and tired of seeing plans for 250 houses and none of those things appearing on it. I just cannot stand up and say, I'm okay with being part of that system. And so I'm voting against it. Thank you.
So I know that loads of people have indicated they wish to speak. What I'm going to try to do is to get the sample from each political group. And if we have time, probably allow others to speak as well. So I'll start with, in order as being indicated, Councillor Hinds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad we finally came out of the twilight zone with conspiracies, and there's been submitted a quite concise motion for us to consider. Our position is clear, and I agree in some respects with the respected councillor next to me, Sam, regarding the framework of places for everyone, and it is being developer-led. But a lot of these things are down to national policy. They're not within the gift of Oldham Council. Now, there will be implications of coming out of PFE, as we've seen in Stockport. I've actually written to the leader of the Stockport Council on 4 separate occasions asking for the benefit to see if there is any regarding the amount of times they're being took to court and losing, the financial costs, and also the re-establishing of development figures from national government. I've yet to have a response which says something. However, to be clear, we represent the people of Shore and Crompton. And in effect, we feel the PFE plan disproportionately affects the people who live there. There is no developments going on in Saddleworth, and that other sites have been withdrawn. So I think the burden, if there's going to be a burden, should be shared, and PFE simply doesn't do it. So we have been consistent from day one with what we've said. We are committed to the Green Belt. In principle, remember as well, this was set up after the war by a Labour administration to ensure developers didn't get rich pickings after the war, and to ensure people's environment gave them outdoor space. So we will be happily supporting the Lib Dem motion, and hopefully we'll be in a better position for Shore and Crompton to renegotiate going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason why the leader of the Lib Dems in Stockport didn't write to you is because they didn't have a plan, and they're actually, the consequences of that are in plain sight for everybody to see, for those who choose to do. And it sort of like shocks me with how brazen people are in misleading people about what they're doing tonight and what the complications and the consequences of supporting the Places for Everyone motion to remove us out of the plan will be. So back in November, I outlined, Mr. Mayor, why I fundamentally believe withdrawing from Places for Everyone would be a mistake. I think it will be a mistake for Oldham. I think it'll be a mistake for our Green Belt, and a mistake for our residents who desperately need housing. It will lead to further developments on the Green Belt in places we fought hard to protect. And the Lib Dems know that, because that's exactly what's playing out in Stockport. The led chaos in Stockport, and now the same Lib Dems want to lead chaos here in Oldham. But more than that, the pulling out of Places for Everyone will have an impact on real people. So let's, while we all sit here as elected members in this chamber, remind ourselves of our duty as corporate parents. So thinking about the borough's care leavers, when they become adults, it's every elected member's responsibility to help them adjust to the world, and a place to live is essential and integral to that. So as corporate parents, it's our job to support Oldham's young people, and that includes helping them find a home just like any other parent would. We also have an issue with our elder residents who need bungalows or adaptable properties. I have an influx of casework in my inbox about housing and the need for it here in Oldham. Just yesterday, I met with the Oldham U3A, who are a group of over 600 members who asked specifically about the plans to build more bungalows for early residents in the question and answer session. And what about those 693 families and those 793 children in temporary accommodation, and I have to say in most instances in really poor temporary accommodation, with no cooking facilities, no proper heating facilities, and no quality of life when they have to be cooped into one room and stay there for endlessly, actually, because we don't have the housing supply. And when we're stood here and we're talking about, allowing developers, greedy developers to build, no, the commitment here by the Labour administration is not just truly affordable housing, but social homes. That's been a political priority that we discussed last year. So it is a big cost to the council when we stand here and we discuss the budget and people talk about the high pressures and the cost of temporary accommodation that they're choosing to ignore tonight. But what the biggest cost is, and the greater cost, is to the quality of life for those families who are left languishing. Oldham families should not be experiencing lengthy stays in places without those cooking facilities, without the space they need to live properly. And these are the people who desperately need permanent homes. So when we talk about a plan and having a plan for people, we're not talking about for anybody else, but for the people of Oldham, who have some of our residents have been in temporary accommodation for over 3 years. That's no life. You can't ask for a home for yourself and sit there in the safe and secure stability of your own home with a roof over your head, but then deny everybody else. And these are the people whose future we jeopardise in playing politics with places for everyone. I understand the concerns that residents have about development, but the reality of the situation we find ourselves in is that Oldhamers need homes. It's much harder to make that case that our most vulnerable people need places to live. But Places for Everyone provides that framework. Leaving that puts us at the mercy of developers. And what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to build houses for care leavers, or families, or pensioners? No chance. They're already eyeing up those juicy sites on our green belt, which will make them the biggest profits. You don't need to take my word for this, though. Let's look at what's happening in Lib Dem Stockport. They thought that their approach was music to residents' ears, but instead, they are dancing to the developers' tune. Just like last month, the developers in Stockport were given the green light to build 278 houses on Gatley Golf Course.
You need to conclude, Councillor.
Gatley Golf Course would have been saved by Places for Everyone, but not anymore. And of course, in November last year, how ironic, given it happened just 2 weeks after our debate in this chamber, that Stockport admitted then that it was going to have to look at Greenbelt development as part of its local plan after all. This is exactly what will happen in Oldham. Thank you. Thank you. Greenbelt gone, green space gone, and you see what's happening in Stockport. You know the big plan to pull out of Places for Everyone is crashing and burning. So we're not going to be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It will come as no surprise that as a councillor for the ward which will be most affected by PFE, I will be speaking in favour of this motion. I would just like to say that it's nothing short of ironic that over the last 3 to 4 years, Labour councillors in this chamber have blamed the Conservative government, previous, for high housing targets. And now the very same councillors are facing the consequences of their own government's ridiculous policies and their increasing housing demand. While I do recognise the need for new housing, especially new affordable housing, we have to approach this sensibly. A prime example of this is the development currently happening in Durka, which, thanks to the previous Conservative government, is being funded on brownfield sites. We now have a range of housing which will meet local housing need without building on our green spaces. If PFE was to go ahead, we would see large green areas completely concreted over, including the Beal Valley and Broadbent Moss, where over 1,000 homes are proposed. Last year, some of the primary schools across Oldham were 10% over their max capacity. In 2022, Oldham had 262,000 residents, spread over 39 GP practices. Just as some basic maths, if there were 20 appointments Monday to Friday at each of those 39 GP practices, not every single resident in Oldham would be able to see their GP practice once. Once. How many people in Oldham rely on seeing their GP more than once a year? A lot of people. There's been no increase in GP services since then, and our amount of residents in Oldham has only grown since then. How do we deal with that additional need? How do we deal with the additional people that need to go to school? The amount of cars on our roads that are only increasing? We can't. Oldham would come to a complete standstill, more so than it already is. This is why I will be supporting this motion and Oldham's withdrawal from PFE immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request members, if you keep your contribution brief, that will allow other people to speak. Councillor Charter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I know it's ironic that we've had 2 St James councillors speaking. I found it interesting Councillor Sharp didn't mention all the green space that's being saved by PFE in St James. Spinners Way was taken out of GMSF, then that's an horrible sound. And therefore, there's houses not being built there, Hodgeclough, a site that would want to be built on, not being built on the PFE. But anyway, what I want to talk about is the real impact this is having on residents in Oldham right now, though. I've got residents on Arncliffe Rise in Moorside who are living next to a small strip of land right in the middle of their street. It's the last developed part of the ward before you hit Saddleworth North, which is obviously big chunks of protected greenbelt. There's been previous attempts to build on this land, and each time this council and then the planning inspectorate have rejected it. A new landowner has come forward and submitted a fresh application, and I spoke to residents and I said, don't worry, under PFE we've got assigned housing, assigned allocations for housing, that means that this will not be accepted. But if we withdraw from Places for Everyone, that assurance disappears. And as Councillor Shah mentioned, we've seen what happens when you try and go it alone in Stockport. She mentioned 278 homes being built on Gatley Golf Course. There's 200 homes being built at Stepping Hill. They're having to double their per year allocation of housing. They need to build 1,900 homes a year outside of PFE. It was only 1,000 in PFE. Places for Everyone is the only tool we have to shape the development in our borough. Councillor Sykes said, oh, this is a developer-led plan. This is a plan where we've had input. Leaving it open to the developers means that we get no say. Every single bit of greenbelt up for grabs. If we withdraw, I'm going to tell the residents I fought for their green space in my ward. I said we want to protect the Opal land, greenbelt land, sites that have been protected by this council, by Greater Manchester. But other councillors decided, no, we think that we want to make perfect the enemy of good. We just want to throw it all out just because we've decided. So, I know many other councillors across this chamber will have similar stories in their wards. And just before you vote on the motion today, just when the bulldozers come to the green belt in your ward, or the Opal in your ward, just remember today. And Mr Mayor, can we have a recorded vote on this, please?
We'll come to that when the time arrives. You got a long way there yet. Councillor Harkness, would you please keep it brief? As well,
yes, thank you. So a few points, things that have said. So obviously Councillor Shaw talked about social housing, temporary accommodation. I think we're all in agreement that we need some more houses and we need to sort out the homelessness. But this is a developer-led plan, and building large houses in on green space is not going to solve the housing crisis. Councillor Charter said about protecting the green belt. The Labour government have pretty much said, oh, we'll just build all over the green belt, so they seem to be wanting to do that. There was a mention about Saddleworth's not going to be affected by this. There was a couple of sites in that, but what hasn't been mentioned at all. So we've talked about the first phases here, but there's a second phase, which is the Colter sites, which started in 2016, whereas lots of developers have found lots of pockets of green space and green belt across the borough, lots in Saddleworth, which will decimate a lot of that, all piece by piece, and we'll have the same usual stuff we have in planning committees at the moment, because we don't have a community-led plan, we have a developer-led plan. So that is the reality. Just to be clear then, because it seemed to be unclear in previous meetings, so tonight we are voting on writing to leave Places for Everyone, because that didn't seem to be what was, because there seems to have been a lot of getting out of that in the past. We could have done this in July. There was a wrecking motion which pushed it down the line. We then had an officer report which pretty much said, despite...
Councillor Harkness, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah?
We know all that.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just mindful
okay.
that a number of people wish
okay.
to speak, please.
Right, so, so let's not stick with this scaremongering, and please vote, let's leave this and have an Oldham-led plan.
Councillor Marlin.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure, like many of us in this chamber, and it will be brief, many of us feel like this evening is Groundhog Day yet again. This motion is for our children and their future generations. It is our civic duty to give them every opportunity to have the benefit of green and open spaces. We cannot allow a developer strategy which is 10 years old that will change our areas beyond recognition. If they have their way, Greenbelt land will be used without question, and there will be no consideration for building the infrastructure that's needed, including schools, medical centres and roads. Every resident I speak to wants to retain our Greenbelt and is strongly opposed to the Places for Everyone plan. This council needs to prioritise a brownfield strategy and getting the thousands of empty homes habitable again so that they can actually be lived in. To solve our housing crisis, a new local plan is what is needed, and this will give our residents and neighbours what they need, including affordable housing and social homes. So please don't listen to the scare tactics that will be used in this chamber tonight. The sky is definitely not falling down. We and our children deserve better, and therefore I ask that you support this motion to lease Places for Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sykes has just said, once they're gone forever. And Councillor Allen-Darney said, we'd be at the mercy of a developer-led system. So let's test it out in terms of what Stockport have got. It's not what I'm saying, it's what the press is saying and what's happening in Stockport. Article in the Manchester Evening News, July 2024. Stockport Council shares plan to build 15,000 new homes and protect Greenbelt. That is their policy. Then we look at an article, the 20th of November 2024, when they've lost some cases, and it says, Stockport reluctantly looks to Greenbelt as it restarts local plan refresh. And bear in mind what I said about 15,000 houses. Stockport's current draft local plan sets out an intention to deliver 15,761 homes across the 15-year plan period, around 1,000 a year. The new methodology states Stockport would need to deliver 1,900 homes a year, a substantial increase because it's not in Places for Everyone. Then the 27th of November 2024, a developer announces plan for 700 homes on Stockport's Green Belt. Land at Hill Green East has been earmarked by Boar Homes for an urban extension with new houses. January 2025, Stockport fails to defend refusal of 270 homes on a ghastly plan. In both cases, the presiding planning inspector has cited Stockport's lack of a 5-year housing supply as its main reasons for allowing the appeal. And one comment that went with this article by somebody who's anonymous, Oldham Lib Dems are trying to put their council in the same position as Stockport. And quite recently, the 7th of February 2025, another one on Greenbelt. Stockport is to lose another slice of Greenbelt land to housing. The council has recommended plans to build 76 new homes to the east of Wilmslow Road in Heel Green. And even yesterday, when I was talking to another councillor, Councillor Hamlet said, it's only a small one. So Councillor Hamlet quite clearly is quite happy to see development on Greenbelt. And can I remind members, Mr. Mayor, that when we had the presentation in September, October last year, of 2 slides that were there, it would be unlawful for Oldham Council as a public authority to request the Secretary of State to revoke PFE as it relates to Oldham. And it also says, Council cannot legally withdraw from PFE on its own. So Councillor Sykes is right. When it's gone, it's gone. And Councillor Allen-Darney is right. It's a developer's charter without PFE. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hamlet, I'm sure you wish to speak.
Of course I'm going to speak. It's a ruddy letter. Bloody heck. Drama. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak, obviously, to support my colleagues who are calling for a change in our strategy and direction in regards to our planning, development and, obviously, our direction. And, obviously, in my ward of Crompton, still elected to ward of Crompton, we have been inundated with bolted-on new developments on our Greenbelt and Opal sites of scientific importance. We've lost that, Councillor Charters, of wetlands and places of sources of major rivers. So, you know, we've lost that. Not you, we've lost that. Roadworks are frequent and traffic is horrendous, particularly along Shore and Oldham Roads and Manchester Roads. Local infrastructure is at breaking point, as mentioned by my colleagues as well. We need infrastructure in place first for our local residents, for people who need them. We need more social housing, and we need houses on brown belt first, not green belt. Yes, once it's gone. Councillor Shah obviously mentioned about bungalows. It's not fair, the fact that we've got bungalows in my ward and my colleague's ward where we've actually got single-storey, four-bed houses overlooking bungalows. I've got elderly residents who are scared the fact that they've literally got large houses overlooking them. People can see into their bungalows. That's not fair. That's not fair for them. And yet you're saying you want more bungalows. They're literally got people looking directly into their houses, Councillor Shah. That's invasion of their privacy, yet your side approved it. Yet we have tents, literally in front of the Civic Tower, people camping out in front of this building. Half this building's empty, open it up, let them use it. That's not fair too. People are camping out, cold, and yet you're there in your warmth, and yet people are having to be frozen at night. So you know what? Why don't we have a local-led strategy? But not bothered about what Stockport's doing. Let's do something for Oldham for a change. So you know what? How about write a letter? What's so scary about writing a letter, Councillor Shah? How about we just write a ruddy letter because it's your own colleague anyway from next door in Tameside, or perhaps maybe you're a little bit scared that she's going to be suspended. I don't know. But you know what? Shiver me timbers. But you know what? How about it's just a ruddy letter? Let's see what happens. Load of faff.
Not a great language, last word to use, but Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get a very distinct feeling that most of the speakers haven't got a clue what Places for Everyone is. They haven't even got a clue that it includes not over.
Allow people to speak, please.
I haven't heard anybody mention that over 90% of the proposed houses is on brownfield sites, and that's over 9,000 houses, and there's only 1,500 houses, unfortunately, on greenfield sites. But if this goes, what do we have? We have nothing in its place for 4 to 5 years. And that would become a developer's paradise. I can see the bulldozers and diggers lined up now. Hanging Cheddar, Thornham Lane, and the list goes on. Failsworth at Woodhouses, and 25 Opal sites. That's other protected open land. All up for grabs that will have no defence for. And you go on about mix of houses. Last year, a third of the houses built in Oldham were affordable or socially rented. So it's actually happening. We've actually got that mix. And it does really perturb me that people, in my view, really haven't got an understanding of the process. The process has taken a long time, but the process has taken a long time because there was consultation. And what we're doing is stabbing in the back all those people in Brighton and other places that took part in the consultation that we listened to, Places for Everybody listened to, and took greenfield sites out of it. So what this development, what Places for Everybody's done is it was a long process, a consultative process that reached a conclusion that I think would mean in Oldham that we wouldn't have to provide an extra 1,000 houses, because that's what we would have to provide in the new housing targets over the next 5 years. We would have to find extra land for another 1,000 houses over the next 5 years if Places for Everyone goes. And I would urge people today to really consider what they're doing to the people of Oldham, because I think they're going to betray them. They'll betray them because we'll see developments all over the place, all over greenfield sites, all over Opal sites, and it'll become an absolute disaster, probably even twice as bad as Stockport.
Councillor Hamblett, Councillor Haynes, I have requested again and again, please respect that, and said, can we please stop cross-talking? I think I've been very, very reasonable in this chamber over the last 18 months. Please respect that. Councillor Hinton?
Sorry, could I raise a point of order in reference to what Councillor Lambert's saying? It's not just a letter, it's a request. It's a request of government. If you say we're just sending a letter for letter's sake, then you're being disingenuous.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Hinton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst this is an issue that will have an effect across the borough, there will be areas that are winners and some will be losers. Councillors in St Nevesey are committed to voting against PFE in the interests of the residents. You may say that Failsworth, both east and west, are winners and having the green belt removed from the plan. I just hope the other Failsworth councillors would join me and Councillor O'Bean in voting against the motion, voting in the interest of the residents, because otherwise they're inviting the developers just to concrete all over the Failsworth green belt. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, what the Liberals have done here, they want to scrap an idea which will work, but they haven't got anything to replace it. Places for everyone, which protects the greenbelt land in Oldham. It also encourages the development of brownfield sites and includes the mill strategy. The biggest issue with planning is the big projects. They're proposed by private landowners and private developers who would choose potentially to develop whichever greenbelt land they saw fit, and it would be unprotected. And it's all right saying refuse this at committee, but this wouldn't be the end of it, and they would appeal against our decision, and we could lose, costing the council money and the loss of valuable greenbelt land, such as Farnham Old Road, Hanging Cheddar in Wrighton, which was protected by Clint Fithiam and Anna Roberts and Steve Bashforth. Will Dave Arnott and Lewis Quigg protect these areas and others from development? They can respond if they want. Spinners Way in St James's, which was protected by Kath Ball and Ginny Alexander. Will Beth Sharp protect that? Sites at Allingwood, which were protected by Steve Williams, Kyle Fithiam and Jean Stretton. Will Cameron Gaffour and Abdul Wahid protect it? You won't, because you don't know the rules. Also, Woodhouse's Greenbelt.
May I suggest, Councillor Davis, sorry, can I have a silence, please? Can I have a silence, please? Councillor Davis, may I suggest, actually, rather than asking direct questions to the people, please speak to the motion.
I will, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Also, Woodhouse's Greenbelt, protected by Norman Briggs, Liz Jakes and Elaine Garry. Will Sandra Ball and Mark Wilkins protect
Sorry, you're just doing the same thing, Councillor Davis. Please, you're not here to ask questions. Please just speak to the motion.
Well, I know the Labour councillors in this chamber will vote to support the Places for Everyone and protect the Greenbelt land in the Oldham Borough. You all have the opportunity tonight to vote to protect Oldham's Greenbelt land and not to have the kind of shambles that is going on in Stockport right now. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, would you please keep it brief?
I will, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that Madam Leader spoke about in her opening there was about bungalows and the lack of them. Now, planners aren't coming to Oldham with plans for bungalows. They come in with 3 to 4 bedroom to 5 aspirational homes. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, which the council welcomes, because you tell us that brings in the big bucks. That's where the money comes from. Because of the government grant reduction, you need to up your game when it comes to housing. So you welcome 3, 4, 5. You don't welcome bungalows. So this is the part where Labour councillors need to do the right thing, and you need to listen to your residents. And the proof of the pudding, you're not doing. And you know you're not, because you've gone from 47 to what the numbers you are now. And Louis already mentioned it, but I'm not sure what you're bothered about. I'm not sure why you're so against writing to your own government, writing to your own people. Councillor Davies, you've spoke earlier on. Will you go campaigning with the deputy leader?
Councillor Murphy, I'll say the same thing to you. Please speak to the motion. Let's start asking.
Well, I kind of feel I am, and I am about to wrap up, Mr. Mayor.
Please, don't interrupt me. End of the day is you are speaking, you're putting the argument forward. People have to make their own minds. You can't force your opinion on people, and that's what you should be doing, and that's what I'm asking all of you to do. So please just speak about the motion, why you believe is the right thing to do, and then people can make their own choices.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll just finish up then. I'm just going to say, and I don't feel like I'm being disrespectful, and I feel like I am keeping to the motion, is that perhaps the leader, who's also a member of the National Executive, could say to the deputy leader, listen, you're about to get a letter in a bit, just chuck it in the bin, will you, and ignore it.
Mr. Mayor.
That's outrageous.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. I think this is being really personalised.
Stop, sir. Councillor Hamlet, this is the 4th time I requested you to not do this. Do you really find it funny? It's not, it's disrespectful to everyone here, you know. How many times I can request you the same thing, please? No, I've said the same thing to Councillor Hinz. There is no competition between two of you.
Point of order, Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Hinz, please. There's no point of order in that. And this is my last time I'm requesting you, please. Just have a professional behavior here. You're an elected member, please. I can't beg you more than this. Councillor Shah, you have point of personal explanation, and can you keep it brief, please?
Yeah, I do. I think the Lib Dems are judging me by their standards. They might have sold off for self-preservation tuition fees while joining the Tories. That's not what we do. The reason why we oppose writing this letter is because it's not the right thing to do. So the continuous personal
Can she withdraw that, please, sir?
And point of clarification, actually, I'm not a member of the National Executive Committee. And even if I was, I respect rules. I wouldn't be breaching them for personal interest.
Thank you. Have you concluded, Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, only to say the chucking it in the bin was a figuratively speaking.
Metaphorically.
Before Councillor Hinz gets excited. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're doing exactly the same thing. Can we stop this name dropping? No, you got the point of personal explanation. No, I think we're just trying to create a tit-for-tat business, basically, in the council. Just creating a circus here.
Point of explanation.
The residents are watching.
Please.
They don't deserve this circus.
No, I want it.
Right, your point of personal explanation now.
Sorry, my sort of frustration was the fact that we're all going through this motion, council time, council money, representing the views of residents, and yet the Lib Dems and Councillor Murphy think this is all some kind of circus, and we're just going to write a letter and throw it in the bin. Well, that's just totally disingenuous and a betrayal of the people sat behind me.
Councillor Haynes, I'm chairing the meeting, and this has been addressed. Thank you very much. May I also remind members, these extraordinary meetings cost quite a lot of public money. This is not here to create the circus. And public deserves to know, and I'll probably request Chief Executive in the next meeting to tell us how much did it cost us to convene this meeting. And they don't come here to create a circus and listen to your circus. Please contribute in a reasonable, professional way. And we've done really well. Carry on like this. I got next, Councillor Jabbar. Please keep it brief, Councillor Jabbar. It might not work well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I always follow your instruction, and I'll try to keep it brief. 3 points I want to make. Firstly, Councillor Hamlet today really had a go at the leader of the council, especially for the design of the bungalows. Councillor Hamlet, the leader of the council doesn't design and approve planning.
Points of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor. Points of personal explanation. Get off.
That's
points of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor.
That's what you actually said, and you need to be corrected, right? It's a planning
explanation, Mr. Mayor. No, points of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor.
I will give you opportunity. I said, let him finish first, please.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, we've seen today several speakers on favour of this motion. Not a single person who was speaking for this, right, mentioned the Stockport Liberal Democrat Council. Do you know why? Because they're in absolute crisis with planning. So I've got 2 basic questions to ask. And I hope Councillor Syke, when he's replying, that he answers that question. Firstly, right, do you think what's happening in Stockport, if it happens in Oldham, is that the best thing, better than pulling out of PFE? That's the first question. The second question is, how are you going to build the extra 200 homes that will be required to build by law if you come out of PFE? Is it going to be built in Chatterton, Royton, Failsworth, Oldham, Saddleworth, Shaw, Lees? And please answer those two questions before you finish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, your point
Mr.
of
Mayor.
explanation, please.
My point of explanation was I did not say about building bungalows. What I said was the current situation in my ward is that I have single-storey, housing.
That there's no privacy for the bungalows.
There's no privacy for the
Which is
bungalows.
correct.
Not that the leader is building them. What I said was I have a single-storey housing and a two-storey housing overlooking bungalows.
That's correct.
The deputy leader, the non-statutory deputy leader, has twisted my words, and therefore he has used it in a political manner.
Thank you very much. You have made your point, and I agree. That's what you said. Thank you. Okay, may I also say we heard a lot. I got a couple of more speakers, and after that, we are going to move to vote because we had actually good discussion on this topic. So, and I noticed now that once 5 people spoken, we just keep repeating the same thing again and again. So, I got Councillor Ghaffur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10 years in the making, and they say we don't know what the hell we're doing. Yeah. Well, we're going to be supporting the Liberal Democrat motion. We believe that the PFE is not well thought out. This administration has made all the decisions and haven't actually consulted any one of us. And, you know, you keep on saying that Stockport's doing this and Stockport's doing that. We're not Stockport. We're Oldham. If your administration can't deal and can't think for themselves then, and develop a plan for Oldham, then maybe you should get out of administration and let somebody else have a chance. If you think that we can... Well, we will, but why not? We'll give it a try, but that's what it is. We are going to be supporting this motion, and if you can't do it, and if you can't handle it, then let somebody else take a chance at it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor Byrne, please, briefly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've talked here about houses, just houses, except that Councillor Sharp talked about infrastructure. Now, where is the infrastructure going? You as a GP know what people in this borough complain about. I can't get a doctor's appointment. That's national. But is there no plan? No, none of us have seen a plan where the new schools are going. Nobody's given us data about, in 5 or 10 years' time, what the applications are going to be for schools. Are they going down? Are they going up? We know some schools are oversubscribed. There's quite a lot of things, and it's not just about protecting Greenbelt. Greenbelt, as I know in my ward, has lots and lots of water on it, which at the moment is causing an awful lot of problems where houses have been built. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, but you know, water has a mind of its own. And I don't see any proper examination of this infrastructure, whether it be roads, schools, doctors, shops, anything else that goes along with these houses. Let's build houses, but let's have them in the right place, and we are the people who know what the right place is, not somewhere either the other side of Manchester or wherever. We know that. Saddleworth have put a plan in, which Councillor Al-Haldami will confirm is really detailed about what should happen to things. Other areas in Oldham may have done this. There is no evidence this has gone into any other plan for this borough. Now, yes, we need houses, but we need everything else as well. And we have to, we don't have to go, well, I was going to say arse about face. But that is actually what we're doing. We should look at it differently. I don't mean any offence by that, but it explains what I mean to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. At least you brought some sense of humour in this conversation. I got Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for accepting my request to speak. I know time is running short, but I'll try to keep my remarks brief. I just wanted to draw a point to the fore in the chamber. It struck me that there's a marked change in argument amongst administration members here tonight. If you asked 6 months ago, it would have been a bad plan, but a fault of the big bad Tories that was supposedly forcing them upon it. Now they're the greatest advocates because they don't want to make an awkward request of party colleagues in Westminster. They really ought to make that request because it would be in the best interest of local residents here in the borough. It's not as though there aren't local MPs that are based within the ministry responsible for housing development. So maybe they could have a word over the course of the weekend and we wouldn't have an unfair housing allocation forced upon the area, and actually we could have a local plan that works for the borough. Maybe it is a possibility with some conversations amongst party colleagues, or at least I might hope so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm assuming you're requesting them to lobby as you've been lobbying to your government, is it? That's a joke. Councillor Brownrich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this whole conversation has been held as though the planning system doesn't actually exist. The fact is we are bound by a national planning policy. We don't have a choice about this. We might not like it, but we will be judged on the impact of that planning policy. The fact is, and the idea that we can write this letter and then on the assumption that the Minister will turn it down is cynical in the extreme. Absolutely. We have to vote tonight on the assumption that this motion is successful and we pull out of PFE. So we have to think about what the consequences of pulling out of PFE would be. The answer is we would have no local plan. That gives us no protection at all until that local plan is completed, which will take years. It's the local plan that will determine whether we have social housing, whether we have infrastructure. That will be determined at local plan stage, which is the second stage to the PFE, which is a strategic overview. So the fact is, without a local plan, without PFE, we will not have a 5-year housing land supply. We couldn't provide a 5-year housing land supply when we had lower housing targets. And whether we like targets or not, we are bound by targets. We have no choice but to abide by them, whoever sets them, whether we like it or not. We couldn't provide a 5-year housing land supply when we had fewer houses. We now have a higher number, so as soon as we come out of PFE, we would have to provide an extra 300 houses a year. We cannot do that. We haven't got a 5-year housing land supply. If you don't have a 5-year housing land supply, developers can then apply to build wherever they like. And under the proposed changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, building in the Greenbelt will become a reliable exception if there isn't a 5-year housing land supply. The fact is PFE has determined the Greenbelt boundary now, and that will be sacrosanct for at least the next 25 years. None of the Greenbelt land that is now Greenbelt in PFE, none of the open land that's in PFE will be available for development because it's in the PFE as being unavailable. So the fact is, if we vote for this, every ward in this borough will have open land that will be under threat. So it won't just affect wards that have got Greenbelt, wards with any open land will be under threat. We will not have the justification to refuse planning permission. If we do, we'll lose on appeal, as Stockport is demonstrating, possibly with costs. So if you vote for this, if you are telling your residents that coming out of PFE protects them from Greenbelt development, you are being disingenuous in the extreme. If you want to protect the Greenbelt, you have to vote against this amendment.
I take the last two speakers, Councillor Akhtar and then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I've been listening to the debate on both sides, but my ex-sort-of Labour members, you're scraping the barrel. We're coming up with comments like we're trying to overcome the homeless crisis, we need more social housing. No doubt we need more social housing, but the actual housing association, if you give them land, they will build more social housing for you. They will build care homes for you. That's for you to free up the land for them, and you haven't been doing that. And the other thing is, the PFE is not just about housing, it's about infrastructure. It's about employment land as well. And your plan actually uses up employment land for housing. We've got Alexandra Retail Park, and adjacent to it, we had prime employment zone. What you've done is changed it into housing, just to please Andy Burnham because he wanted the numbers to go up. Surely we can't be building houses next to Dual Cadbury, the busiest road in Oldham. Come on, that should be prime employment zone, and we should be using it for that. So therefore, this group will be voting for the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, colleagues in this chamber, they should be well versed on the actual reality of what withdrawing from places for everyone really means for our borough, as just been articulated by Councillor Brownridge. And I have to say, I find it really, really frustrating that, you know, we have to hear yet again the smoke and mirrors arguments that are being regurgitated over and over. The fact is that this plan is 10 years in the making, not 10 years old. And the alternative to a developer-led plan is not a community plan. It's no plan, an unrestricted development. And just some of the myths that are being perpetuated is astounding. I mean, Councillor Murphy, I'd love to know where you've got your information from, because it's complete fabrication. The plans that you're talking about haven't even come forward. And Councillor Guffaw, yes, we are citing Stockport, because actually Councillor Sykes cited Stockport on many occasions when they thought things were going well for Stockport. Now it's all gone to rack and ruin. No one wants to talk about it. But the truth of the matter is that this motion before us tonight offers no evidence base or reasoning for asking to be removed from places for everyone. And why is that? It's because there aren't any good reasons, and there certainly isn't a viable alternative that we can put forward to the Secretary of State, because if there was one, then it would have been included in the motion. The facts of the matter are, since November, what the officers explained in their report has been backed up by events. The government has published a new national planning policy framework with a new housing requirement, and our house building requirement would immediately increase by 1/3 if we were to withdraw from places for everyone. And the council can't meet that higher housing requirement, and therefore that will make it easier for house builders to get planning permission on Greenbelt and Opal land. We've already heard lots about the Stockport example, and that is why the approach that this Liberal Democrat motion and any member or group who supports this is effectively giving the green light to developers to build wherever they choose. So, given my portfolio, I can tell you for a fact that officers have already been receiving enquiries about housing development in areas that wouldn't be permitted under places for everyone. And it will be those sites that we previously removed that will come forward first. And I do think there is a legitimacy, Mr Mayor, in highlighting some of those areas and asking those members here to be clear about what it is that they're voting for. And so I would echo some of what Councillor Davis has said, because for Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Ball, the question is, do you want to see hundreds more houses built, wood houses? Because if that's what you're saying yes to, then, yeah, go ahead and support the motion. The same for Councillor Adams, Councillor Rana and Councillor Quick.
Councillor Taylor, sorry, I don't want, I think you're making a very logical argument. People understand what they're voting for.
But though the areas, I can say then in terms of the areas that will come forward first, Mr Mayor, is Failsworth, Royton North, part of St James, and Crompton. And that isn't even mentioning the Opal sites, which, you know, especially across Leeds and Saddleworth, there are lots of them. And again, to those councillors who represent those areas, you know, you need to be realistic in what you're saying and what you're voting for, because what you would be voting for is large-scale, unplanned housing development, and that's exactly what you're voting for. And without an adopted development plan, we can't plan where development will go, and neither can the infrastructure providers. The approach this motion is advocating will massively backfire. It won't deliver more infrastructure or the truly affordable homes that many of our residents so desperately need. And we, as elected members, have a duty to protect the borough from uncontrolled development. But there is still time to make the right decision. Some of you may have voted against the officer recommendation in November, but we now know the consequences are real. So please do not sacrifice the control that we currently have over our green belt and green spaces. And please do not give up our only opportunity to manage this much-needed housing growth in the right way by simply taking the view we'll write a letter that you think we can then go and have a word and not back.
Thank you. I'm satisfied that we had enough debate. I think over 21, 23 people have spoken, so I'm going to ask Councillor Sykes, yeah, if you have a support from, yeah, of course. Councillor Sykes, your right of reply. You got quite a lot to reply to. Thank you.
Wanted to go on. Go on. No. Right. Okay.
Just to be clear, we can be here for 3.5 hours for this part of the meeting. That's no problem at all. But
no wish to rise to the challenge.
It needs to be right use of resources.
No wish to rise to the challenge. So let's just deal with some of the... It's interesting, and I think Councillor Lancaster nailed it very succinctly. The debate and the argument has changed. So here we are, we sat in the council chamber, and broadly speaking, this side of the chamber and that side of the chamber is saying, don't do this, because if you do this, we'll build more houses. So the Labour Party is arguing against building more houses. And it doesn't matter whether they're to buy, to rent, or whatever. So part one of the debate, stick with the plan, build less houses. And let's just remember the twaddle we heard when we debated GMSF. This was the best deal we could get for Oldham. This was going to put us in a good position in Greater Manchester. And tonight, not from this side, not from people who spoke in favour, you've told us what a much better deal we got in PFE because we took this site out, that site out, all that. Well, I'll tell you, I don't think PFE is good enough, and that's why I brought this resolution, and I think we can do better. And the other thing, because a couple of councillors mentioned it, St James's. I wouldn't hold St James's up as an example. It's something I think we should be ashamed of. The length of time we've left land derelict. We decimated communities, brownfield site, screaming for development. 15 years on, I'm really pleased we're getting some houses out of the ground now. It's really good to see. But it's an embarrassment. It's not something to celebrate.
Mr Mayor, can I make a point of personal explanation on that?
No, sorry, not that.
So, and people say we've saved Greenbelt land. Well, let's just be careful. This government's changed the definition. We've suddenly got something called grey land. I've heard of greenwashing, but we're now having grey washing. So the edges of Greenbelt, is that not as important as ordinary Greenbelt now? And that's our right to build on. So it doesn't matter what we define. The government's changing and moving the goalposts. But like I say, it is an opportunity. Places for Everyone is based on housing calculations from over 10 years ago. And some members tonight are trying to argue that if we come out for it, we'll have to build more housing. And that's a bad thing. They seem to be accepting that Places for Everything won't deliver the right housing, while at the same time saying we should stick with it. It is, as I think Councillor Shoab said, about infrastructure. GMSF had the infrastructure in it. I know that got taken out when we had PFE, and it's that my constituents and the people I speak to that already live here, never mind the people who are, and they are very welcome, are going to live here or have better homes here, doctors, schools, roads, public transport, is the key bit of gluing all this together, not just building houses. So what we need is a plan that's right for every district in our borough. And Councillor Hinds made the point, you know, you bragged about bits of Greenbelt and disproportionately the bits of Greenbelt that have gone are at our end of town or the borough, and that's not fair. But we need a thing that's going to deliver for Shaw and for Royton and for Failsworth and for Chadderton. We need a plan for every district in our borough, not just a plan that delivers residential properties for the town centre, for example. I'm not opposed to that. I think it's a good plan. But why can't we apply that plan to our other districts? Why aren't we getting more people to live in those centres to keep those alive? Places that are absolutely crucial, as we found out in COVID. And let's not just have a plan that's obsessed with Oldham Town Centre. So if the approach is right for Oldham Town Centre, I think it's right for our other districts, whether it's properties to rent or properties to buy. Why not indeed? We should pass this motion. Firstly, Places for Everyone won't deliver affordable housing and will lead to the destruction of our green belt for developer profit. We could have built social housing years ago. Again, I think it was Councillor Shoab said, you'd have found the land, there was housing associations who had money. In fact, there is an housing association that's building property outside this borough because it can't find land in this borough to build those properties. That's a fact. Places for Everyone won't deliver affordable housing. Second, Deliver the housing that residents deserve. Brownfield, ex-industrial,
you need to conclude your valuable
I certainly will, Mr Mayor. And finally, places for everyone has no support among the people we serve. So councillors know what they need to do tonight. We've had another debate tonight. It's the third we've had this year. The issue is well rehearsed. I'd ask members to support, please.
Sorry, Councillor Sykes, you do have a 6-minute apologies. It's my fault. So you can speak for another 50 seconds. Thank you. He's setting good example. We've been asked for recorded vote, which has been supported by members. So I hand over you to Chief Executive.
Councillor Adams, Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Al-Hamdani,
4.
Councillor Ali Mohan, Councillor Ali Zahir, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Aslam, Councillor Azad, Councillor Ball, Councillor Bashforth, Councillor Bishop, 4. Councillor Brownridge, Councillor Byrne, 4. Councillor Charters, Councillor Chauhan, 4. Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Davis, Councillor Dean, Councillor Gaffour, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Hamlet,
4.
Councillor Harkness, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Hints,
4.
Councillor Hindle, Councillor Hoban, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Hurley, Councillor Hussain Aftab, Councillor Hussain Feeder, Councillor Hussain Junaid, Councillor Hussain Sajid, Councillor Ibrahim, Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Islam, Councillor Jabbar, Councillor Kenyon, Councillor Cowser, Councillor Lancaster, Councillor Marland, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Moores, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Mushtaq, Councillor Nasheen, Councillor Navesey, Councillor Quigg, Councillor Rustich, Councillor Shah, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sheldon, Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Sykes, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Waheed, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Woodvine,
4.
Mr Mayor.
Motion is carried. So that concludes the business
Mr Mayor, can we have the
this evening.
figures, please? Just have the final figures, please. We usually have them read out. Scores on the doors.
Your printed version as well, Councillor Quigg. What's the final figure? 3128. Sorry, 3128, exactly. Yeah, 3128. That concludes the business for this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you to the visitors as well.